What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another KML interview. Today we got my brother Dylan, who's a D1 athlete. Dylan, give us a little background information on yourself.
I play soccer. I'm a goalkeeper at Marist College. Been there for the past 4 years. Currently a senior there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Graduated from Monroe Woodbury High School. Won a state championship there my senior year. We had a pretty good season. Growing up, I played with Cedar Stars Academy, Hudson Valley. Played with them since my fourth grade team. We had a really great chemistry, and that led to us being one of the top teams in the state and winning some big time tournaments and getting in front of some big time schools.
Nice. Now, what made you be able to get recruited to D1 school?
Yeah, so getting recruited is a bit difficult. A lot of players think, Duke's gonna come right after me. I want to go to Duke. I'm a good player. Duke's gonna find me. But ultimately, you could probably say a million people that are trying to do the same thing you are. All across
Whole
the
world.
nation and including internationally. So for me, based on like my genetics, I have a really good build. I have a really good stature for a goalkeeper. 6'5", 205. In high school when I was getting recruited, I was 6'3", 175, which as you can tell, I was able to put on weight. But the one thing you got to do is you got to obviously show interest in the school, but you also got to make a highlight tape.
Mm-hmm.
So schools aren't just going to go find you. Like they're not just going to randomly show up to your games. They may be going for someone else. You may end up playing very well, whether you catch their eye. But ultimately, like the schools I talked to, they saw my highlight tape first. I made that, said, hey, I'm interested in blah 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 school.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my highlight tape. Here's some references. I'm very interested. All that. Here's some tournaments I'll be at as the tournaments come around. I send them my schedule, and then most of the time they show up depending on how interested they are. But yeah, I mean, I was persistent. I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't gonna let anything stop me from
Yeah.
interfering.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you're coming into Marist as a freshman, what were you expecting in a soccer standpoint?
Yeah, so when I first committed to Marist, obviously I was very excited, but I knew when I was entering, like when I was looking at schools that I knew playing typically kind of soon was like on my radar. That was a big factor. And when I first committed, there was going to be two seniors when I was a freshman and a junior. So I was like, maybe I get a game, but ultimately I'll learn from them. And by my sophomore year, I should be the guy. But another transfer came in and kind of impacted and was a factor that kind of got in the way of that happening. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, like it shows character, builds. It's like I have to deal with adversity.
So, what was playing time like after the transfer?
So when the transfer came in, he was only a year older than me, so he's gonna be a sophomore when he came in. He actually took the starting job away from the previous starter, who's gonna be a senior. And at that time, I redshirted my freshman year, which was good. I wasn't immature, but it helped me realize the pace of the game and just experience it while learning and just getting a better feel. So the two seniors were considered the backups. I was learning and just trying to absorb all the information I can from them. Obviously, they had a little bit more experience than me. They know a little bit more. So at that time, I was just trying to be a sponge and taking everything in and trying to be the best I could.
Yeah. What was your mindset like working out and playing, knowing you're most likely not going to get an opportunity?
So being the backup, anything could happen in a split second. I remember, so my freshman year, I redshirted. Second year, COVID obviously was going on, and we didn't have a season. We were the only school in the MAC to say we were going to play not. But my junior year, it was our third game of the season. We were playing against national, like a top program nationally. At that time, St. John's was receiving votes. They were coming off a great past 2 seasons, and we were up 1-0, 10 minutes left in the game, and I'm just sitting on the bench, like, just taking everything in. Just I'm not expecting to go into the game, and then all of a sudden the starter gets hurt, and I'm thrown into it, and I just came off a very good summer season, very confident, which was helpful. But thrown in a situation like that, you always got to be ready, and you never know when your time's going to be called. So in terms of working out, I always got to be staying fit. Always got to be doing the right things. So I try and focus on explosive movements for the goalkeeping position, and especially during season, you kind of want to just do a lot of maintenance stuff. You don't want to be trying to build muscle, getting sore, because that's not what's important at that point. So just always being fit, always being limber, because if I step on that field, I got to be the guy, and I'm not going to be the reason why our team loses. So I'm always ready.
Now, at Marist, did you ever feel the need to transfer earlier?
Yeah. So the only the only thought of me transferring was after our junior year. We just won our conference. Everything was going well. I got into a few games, started 2 games, came off the bench in 2, but ultimately I thought I deserved a bit more playing time, especially with like injuries to our starter. I thought like maybe he could have,
Sat a game.
they could have sat him more, because he would get hurt, and then they would throw him back in, and just a little re-aggravation, and especially after me playing well, you would think they would reward good performance, but didn't really happen. So after my junior year, he was coming back for his 5th year because of the COVID redshirt year, and I was thinking about it, but ultimately, from an academic standpoint, it really didn't make sense. I was thinking about graduating in the fall of my senior year. Ultimately, I didn't end up doing it. I added another concentration, but you know, I liked the major. I liked the minor. I was pretty much
Done.
so close to graduating that it didn't really make sense for me to lose X amount of credits just to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought my time would come after he left, but ultimately I thought it'd be better to enter the transfer portal after my senior year. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What was the biggest lesson you learned from Marist?
yeah.
Some
So
excitement.
from soccer standpoint, or
Yeah.
yeah, so obviously Kyle kind of mentioned like, or even I didn't really play much, and that's a factor that a lot of people have to take into account for, because if you're going to a school just to play and say you get an injury or you're not playing as much, you got to be happy with the people you're around, the setting you're in, and ultimately you got to just be happy as just a regular student. So that was obviously another factor. A lot of my friends don't really play the sport, so or not even athletes at the school. So the biggest thing for me was that I was able to enjoy my time, even if I was away from the soccer side. Like things weren't going well, but I'd still be happy as a student, and that was a good thing that I learned, and it's also a lesson that I kind of learned even just from like the whole collegiate side of recruiting, that everything isn't as golden
Sounds.
as it sounds. I've played with a lot of players on my growing up. My club team, even players that I knew that got recruited. Everything the way very good players, some of them just ended up quitting just because it wasn't what they thought. It was a little too stressful, strenuous, and it was getting in the way of their academics. And ultimately, they made the decision like it's best for them not to play anymore. They kind of lost the passion for the game. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately, you got to find a place where you ultimately think you'll have fun and
Yeah.
not just going for the athletic side of things.
One thing I could say is it's pretty cool how you made a negative positive, how you look at it. But now we got the exciting part, guys. The transfer portal. All right. So, in a short summary, what is the transfer portal exactly?
Yeah, so the transfer portal, it's pretty much just a database of names. So I remember talking to one coach, and because I was unfamiliar with it. It was probably I entered the portal. I swear to God, 2 minutes later, I got an email from this school saying we saw you in the transfer portal. You're. I just asked him like, what is it like? What do you see? He told me it's basically just a database. Says my name. Sorry, it says name, school, position, and graduation year. So this guy sees Dylan McDermott, Marist College, goalkeeper, 2023, and that's all there is. They just that. There's no. I don't believe there's a highlight tape attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe there's stats of height and weight, but ultimately that's pretty much what it is. And I remember the guy telling me maybe close to 10,000, maybe more than 10,000 people on that list at the time, and that was around
Just soccer?
yeah, just for soccer. But that was around Thanksgiving time. Maybe it was in the maybe not 10,000, but he said maybe a couple thousand. But
Mm-hmm.
that just goes to show like how competitive like the transfer is.
Yeah.
So.
How many schools initially reached out to you, and then what were your final choices?
Yeah, so initially, within the first 2 days of entering the transfer portal, I want to say there was about 6 schools, and all those schools were just previous schools that I was getting
Emailed?
recruited by during high school. So obviously, without having to dive deep into researching, they saw my name, reached out, hey, saw you're in the portal. Uh, like, what's your thoughts? What you're looking for? Obviously, we're very interested. Da 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 da. And we just kind of talk the recruiting that way and built off that. And then during the process, I probably emailed more than 50 schools. Like any school that I saw an opportunity at, and a school that I wanted to be at was who I was emailing. Obviously I do my research. I see who's losing goalkeepers, who's in need of goalkeepers, and even if it's a school I just kind of wanted to be at, like for an academic standpoint, potentially just even trying to get money that way. And ultimately, I kind of had like a final four.
What were your final four?
Final four? Four. Ultimately, it was just well, obviously, I committed to Binghamton.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Binghamton, Sacred Heart, Seton Hall, and
Cortland.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, I thought those were 4 schools were like the best for me. And after talking to a lot of coaches and seeing the role for me, I kind of eliminated some because obviously I wanted to play. And some schools kind of saw me as, hey, like we want you to come in as a backup, da 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 da. And the school was very nice, all that, but honest, I wanted to play right away. So those schools kind of gave me the best shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, getting off the phone with Binghamton, how did you feel?
Felt the sense of relief. So leading up to that decision, it was very stressful trying to figure out the academics, the financials, and even just trying to see like the programs, like trying to see like how I would sort some things. And even leading up to the decision, it was stressful. A lot of coaches would be calling me and saying, hey, we found some money, da da da, like what are your thoughts? Like, we know your decision's coming up soon, da 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 da. And at this time, I was a bit getting overwhelmed just because, I committed December 30th. I initially entered the portal. Right after Thanksgiving. I believe it was the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and it took me a week to make my highlight tape, and I sent my first email the 5th. So I kind of only had for my first email 3.5 weeks of talking to coaches, and then I only took my first visit. I believe it was December 16th when my semester ended. So I only really had 2 weeks after really talking to schools, like after I had my thing, and it was just a lot to process. Not as long as typical high school recruitment, but
Yeah, I know how that feels. It's been years.
In terms of this, you gotta act fast. So it was a little bit overwhelming, but I believe I made the right decision and happy to be a Bearcat.
Yeah. I just had a question, but you took it away. Got it. Um, with the recruiting process in general, let's say a school doesn't give you as much money as you wanted for you to go there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tell the coach that?
So like kind of asking for more money
Yeah,
without
saying like
like
without
being very
sounding
subtle about it.
like being respectful.
I mean, over time you're going to build a relationship with these coaches as you see these schools as your home for the next 4 years and your coach for the next 4 years. So at this point, hopefully you guys have a good relationship. You've talked a lot. For me, I remember telling Bing just like, hey, like from a financial standpoint, like I'm getting a lot more like better money from
Other
this one
schools
school, like is there anything you could potentially do? Like Bing is my top choice, but it's hard to
go there.
overlook the financials, like ultimately after spending 4 years in college, spending thousands of dollars, like it's an investment and I don't want to be in much debt. And I just kind of was just honest, and just like off the relationship I had with him, he knew I was being like sincere about it, and I was obviously a part of their plan, so they were able to find money for me.
Yeah. Would there be any advice you have just to athletes in general who want to play at the next level?
One thing I would say is you gotta love it. When
It's emotion. You gotta love it, baby.
when things are going well, you're not playing. Are you gonna still be putting in all that work? It's a grind. Because at the end of the day, you're not that stud of your team anymore. You could be, but you gotta put that effort in. You gotta show it every day, and all these guys that are on your team are as hungry as you are, or as like once were. And you just going to practice isn't enough at the end of the day. You got to be doing extra work. You got to be in the weight room. You got to be bettering yourself every single day, even if it means just falling asleep at 10 and then just getting your full 8 hours of sleep, because it's really a grind.
Yeah.
And if you don't love it, then
Serious.
you're just wasting your time and you're going to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I would also say that if you're trying to get recruited, you gotta be persistent with your emailing. You gotta
Need tips? Hit me up.
You gotta, well, yeah, you hit him up and I can help. But you gotta have a highlight tape to create interest. I remember being at a tournament and we were playing the number 4 team in the nation, and
Filled.
the field is 120 yards by 75, and there was not 1 inch of space around that field. And I could tell you this: there was not one team, maybe a few teams for our players, but there was a lot of top programs there for a lot of the other team. And just because like we were there, we kind of got looks. But if you put the interest in, if they see that highlight tape, they like it, they're gonna show, and you just gotta be persistent. You gotta want it, because like I said, if there was only a few thousand in the transfer portal, that means probably 75% of
Teams.
75% of all division, well, because there's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, and that doesn't even include the NAIA. So there's kids all over trying to fight for that spot and claim that spot on the program. So you got to be persistent. You gotta want it. But,
Yeah.
So
take this serious.
Yeah.
And one quote I want to share that really inspires me is, what is the difference of an amateur and a pro? An amateur does something until he does it right. A pro does it until he can't do it wrong. I want you guys to always remember that, and that's what I'm always going to remember. As always, I want to thank you for watching the KML interview. It was a great time spending some time doing the interview. As always, Henny up.